Let's cut to the chase. This is a fantastic lens if you're filming other people. It's not so great when you're filming yourself. It's good for photos. I don't normally show photos, but you can see here that the cropping works quite well with this lens. We don't see vignetting. You're about to watch a film I shot over 6 months ago and I wasn't going to release it. If you've already seen and heard enough about this lens, please leave a like and I'll see you in the next video.
Hi there, it's so great to see you. I'm back at the airport because I'm travelling to Tasmania. Last time I travelled I took this lens, a 7 Artisan 7.5mm lens, and you can check out a video entirely shot with this one lens in the link below. But today I'm pairing it up with this little beauty. It's a 35mm Fujian cctv lens with a fantastic aperture of 1.7. I've switched lenses but I haven't changed the camera position. And here's how cropped in it is when I'm shooting in 4K. Here's the same shot in 1080p. As we go through Tasmania, I'm going to show you all the benefits of this lens, but also all the benefits of having 2 lenses. You might think you want to travel with 5 or 6 lenses, but restricting your lens selection to just 2 lenses means that you have a creative constraint, and when you're traveling, lots of things are new. So why not stick with 2 lenses, get a different mood happening in the film, and get to know your lenses really well. A couple of differences you notice immediately from the 7 Artisan 7.5mm lens. Number one is the background blur. We can get that great background blur and bokeh using the CCTV lens. The other thing we get is proportions just are a little bit better, so my face is no longer as distorted as it is with the 7 Artisan's lens. To get this lens working well on the Canon M50, you're going to need a couple of adapters. The first one is the mounting adapter. These are about $5 on eBay. Here I've got a couple of step-up rings and a variable ND filter. Looks like I've also got another UV filter sitting over the top of the variable ND filter. And the variable ND filter is going to allow me to use the open aperture.
This is our final boarding call for remaining guests travelling to New.
It's a great lens for the studio. I'm filming in a studio right now using the 35mm, and unfortunately when I was traveling I forgot a small piece of equipment that attaches to the lens. It's known as a macro ring. It's really small. I'll put it on one of the lenses because I've got 2 of the lenses. It also comes in silver, this lens. I'll put it on one of these lenses and I'll film the other lens with it, and you'll find there's an amazingly thin area of focus. And right now I'm shooting with the aperture wide open, so if I walk towards the camera I'll come in and out of focus. It's so wafer thin, the focus area with this camera. You can probably tell at times I'm moving out of focus, and hopefully I've got my mark on the floor right down here. Hopefully right here I'm in focus. Here's how footage looks with one of these macro rings attached. You can see the front of that macro ring is in focus, but the rear is out of focus. Or if I move it forward a bit, my finger in the background's in focus and the fingers in the foreground are completely out of focus. It's so thin. And that's just with one attached. You can put 2 back to back. These just attach to the bottom of your lens. This macro ring can be really useful for product shots like this. Let's go to Hobart. I've come to the berry farm in Sorrel where we're picking cherries and berries. This is going to sound really weird. We came here straight from the airport with all our luggage, and it's where I first realised I'd made a terrible error, a massive mistake. And it's a great spot for this lens, which comes in at only 162 grams. It's that perfect size to throw underneath all of those bushes and just get rid of it. Yep, just get rid of it. The mistake I made was bringing this lens to Tasmania. Within 5 minutes I realised I just didn't like it. I think it's a fantastic lens in the studio. I was used to using it in the studio. And here I found myself on holiday and it was like having brought the wrong girlfriend. You know that moment where you've taken the wrong girlfriend on travels and you think, well, I brought the wrong one. This one likes to hang out inside in the studio. My other girlfriend, she's active. She likes to go out surfing with me. I wish I'd brought her along. Well, that's how I feel about this lens. I was lucky enough to be staying in West Hobart. Just up the hill from West Hobart is Knock Lofty Reserve. I really struggled with the focus out of doors. Indoors in the studio it's fine. I place a marker, focus, and I have a mark on the floor where I can stand and everything is fine. But outdoors, there's more variability. I just think this lens is fantastic at night. Look at these lights as the lens changes focus distance. It's phenomenal. Spoiler alert, overall I would say this lens is fantastic when it comes to people. I just don't think it's as good when it comes to nature. I've come to Salamanca markets and they're just like any other market anywhere else in the world, only bigger. I'm just not a market person, but I'm someone who's quite willing to lie down in a courtyard and have a bit of a snooze. Because I'd rather be up the hill, looking out across the harbour itself. It's kind of weird to think that back in the day you'd be able to look out across this harbour and see a whole bunch of whales resting there. 7.5mm 7 Artisans lens really helps give you that overview, and the 35mm really takes you into the scene itself. Let's have a break and listen to the sounds of nature. I'm at the Taste of Tasmania. It's a huge event, super popular, and it's booming here. If you like people, you like good food, it's a great place to come. What's here? Heaps and heaps of food, a lot of seafood, a lot of meat, and a lot of alcohol and ice cream. The biggest queues are for those places. Got these long tables, beautiful, right by the harbour, on a beautiful summer's day here in Hobart. I think it's time to switch over lenses. This lens from the last video is fantastic at showing the overall environment. Let's switch up to the 35mm lens now and get a little bit of detail. Tasmania has really built its brand on great food, good nature, and one of the great things about Hobart is you can go from somewhere like this to rainforest or to the beach or to a river really quickly. We've made it to River House. We're about 30 to 40 minutes out of Hobart. Absolutely stunning spot. River House itself is just up here. We've got a bath on the deck, looking out over this magnificent river, and the drop down to that swimming hole where I'm about to jump in. We'll be here for a night, then it's back to Hobart. It's steep country, so to get down we need to grab hold of this rope and go all the way down this steep section here. Okay, here's the real reason why I'm so disappointed with this film and why it's taken me over 6 months to release it. You see, I broke my own system. Normally I film very quickly. I shoot my film, I edit my film, and I can see the results and I can see where I want to improve. When I went to Tasmania with these two lenses, I thought, yeah, I'll be fine. And when I play back the footage on the Canon M50 LCD screen, it looks great, looks fantastic, but of course that screen is not high resolution. You can't see everything you need to see. And the mistake I made was I shot mainly at a wide aperture of 1.7, which can work really well for some shots, but in general it's a little bit blurry, a little bit out of focus, a little bit soft, I suppose you would say. And I didn't really know that until I returned to Perth, and by then I'd shot a mountain of footage, I had a lot to edit, I didn't really know what to do. The other reason is that over 6 months, obviously your taste changes, you move on, you become better at different things. So for me to get this film out, it's really a bit like putting in your tax return. I just needed to get out there, I need to get rid of it, I need to move on. I'm prepared to bet that when professional gambler David Walsh came up with the idea of the Museum of Old and New Art, I'm prepared to bet that everyone thought he was crazy and that it would never work. And yet today it stands as one of Tasmania's greatest attractions. And it might just be the perfect spot to test out this lens. This is what I mean when I say it's good for filming other people. You saw from the start that when I film myself it's too cropped in. And that's because this lens has such a narrow field of view, it's almost impossible to film yourself well. But it is great for filming other people. The difference between a 25mm lens and a 35mm lens might not sound like much. In fact, it might sound like 10mm. But you need to understand that the Canon M50 has a crop factor of 2.56. This means you're looking at the difference between a 64mm lens and a 90mm lens. And at 90mm, this lens gives you a very narrow field of view, which is why it's so great for filming other people. And nowhere better than a dark environment like Mona. All C-mount lenses use a threaded screw to mount onto any camera. So when you mount it onto the adapter, you're screwing it into the adapter. This means when you're focusing or adjusting aperture, occasionally you can accidentally unscrew the lens. And this is one of the annoying features of these lenses that's unique to C-mount lenses. Occasionally, you'll adjust your aperture and unscrew your lens, then you have to flip it all the way back, screw it in really hard, and then adjust your aperture again. It's a bit painful and a bit annoying. Even though this lens is super cheap, it doesn't come with a lens cap. You'll need to purchase your own lens cap for this lens. It's not a standard size. There's a film I've watched recently called Bikes of Wrath, made by 5 Australians who rode their bikes across the Dust Bowl of America. Obviously they haven't taken a lot of luggage. It looks like they've shot a lot of that film with this very lens. One thing you will have noticed by now is that this lens is a little bit jerky. I tend to find that lenses that are in the 7.5 to 25mm range can be used handheld with a Canon M50, and as soon as you move beyond 25mm, that jerkiness really becomes noticeable. This means with this lens you really want to lock it off on a tripod, and in fact you'll need a fluid head tripod if you want smooth shots. You can forget that travel tripod that I've put in my other video and that I've used in Tasmania. You really need a fluid head if you want to get good motion as you use this lens. Of course, the M50 suffers from a really wicked rolling shutter, and which is another reason why you'll need a fluid head or just lock off the tripod as is. These lenses are so cheap, you might be tempted to get the 35mm lens alongside the 25mm CCTV lens. I wish I had simply got the 25mm lens. I find it is much better for me personally. But these lenses are cheap, so you could get both. The difference for me is the 25mm gives me the moodiness that I see in the 35mm, but is just a lot more flexible. And fundamentally, when I look at this film that I've shot in Tasmania, I think it's all mood, no story. So into the future, I'm looking to use this lens as part of a story, not in an entire film in and of itself. It is very moody, and after using it so much, I have a good sense of where that mood fits and how I might use it in particular films. For instance, I find this lens is fantastic in dark environments, and that's not just because it's good for low light generally, but the blurring of the edges just seems to work a lot better when you've got a dark background. I think Gangguan said it's better to paint dark paintings, and if you look at artworks generally in galleries, you'll find darker artworks are more prominent, and maybe that's just the way our mind or our vision sees the world. When there's more dark and less light, we kind of fill in the blanks a little bit easier. As a result of shooting this footage in Tasmania, I'm now working on my first feature film. And maybe this lens will appear, maybe the 25mm lens will appear. I'm not really sure. I'm still working on the script, and obviously if there's a spot for it, it will come in, and if there's not a spot for it, it won't. But ultimately, I'm tired of just shooting footage like this, and I've concentrated much more on story and where I need to go, and I'm going to use my lenses to fit the story rather than fit a story around a particular lens. And that's it for my trip to Hobart. I wish all the firefighters the best of luck today as we fly out through this haze of smoke. And good luck to all the residents as well. Bye now.